Chapter 9, A Wonderful Room. The song of early morning birds filled the woods. Jack opened his eyes and sighed. They were back in Frog Creek. He could breathe again. His eyes didn't sting anymore. He was wearing his own clothes, even his sneakers. I wonder what happened to everyone, Annie asked anxiously. Andrew, Peter, and their aunt, and Betty and Fred, and all the other people. Jack pulled out the research book. He turned to the last chapter. He read aloud. After the earthquake fires were put out, people from all over the world sent help to San Francisco. The brave citizens of the city never gave up hope. Many even wore badges that said, "Let's rebuild at once." In less than 10 years, San Francisco was once again the loveliest cities in the United States. One of the loveliest cities in the United States. "Oh, good," breathed Annie. "Hey, do you have our sign?" Jack reached into his pack. He pulled out the sign from Peter and Andrew. He placed it on the floor next to the list from the Civil War and the letter from the Revolutionary War and the slate from the Pioneer Schoolhouse. "We have all 4 things now," he said. "So what happens next?" said Annie. Suddenly, there was a roar. A bright light flashed through the treehouse. Jack covered his face. When he peeked over the tops of his fingers, he saw Morgan Le Fay. "Morgan!" Jack and Annie cried joyfully. They both hugged her. Morgan hugged them back. "We found the 4 writings for the library," said Jack. Annie picked up the list and the letter. Jack picked up the slate and the sign. "Here they are," he said. They started to give everything to Morgan, but she held up her hand. "Do not give them to me," she said. "Someone else needs them more." Ooh. Suddenly, a blinding light flashed through the treehouse again. There came a great roar, then silence. When Jack and Annie opened their eyes, they were no longer in the magic treehouse. They were standing in a huge, shadowy room. The room smelled wonderful, like leather, books, and a burning wooden fire. Flames crackled in the huge stone hearth. Along the walls were rows and rows of tall bookcases filled with books. "Welcome to my library," Morgan said softly. "Wow," whispered Jack. Someone here is waiting to meet you," said Morgan. "I told him that 2 special messengers would soon arrive." "Where is he?" asked Annie. Morgan pointed to a man dressed in dark blue in the corner of the library. He sat in a chair. His head was bowed. His hair was black, streaked with silver. "He looks tired," Annie whispered. "Yes, he and his knights have been defeated," Morgan said quietly. "He has given up all hope for his kingdom." "How can we help him?" asked Annie. Morgan looked down at the special writings that Jack and Annie held. "Would it help if we showed him these?" Jack asked. Morgan smiled. "Come on, let's show him," said Annie. They crossed the room and knelt before the tired-looking man. "Excuse me," Annie said. The man looked up. He had sad gray eyes. "We're Morgan's messengers. We've come to help," said Jack. The man shook his head. "I don't understand," he said in a deep, tired voice. "You are children. How can you help?" He must not know any children from Culp Elementary because they are excellent helpers. "Sometimes children can help a lot," said Annie. "Jack and I have helped a general, and we helped wounded soldiers. We helped people caught in an earthquake and a twister," Jack added. The man straightened up a little. "That is brave," he said. "We want to share how we did it," said Annie. She held up the list from the Civil War. "This tells you how to help wounded people," she said. She held up the letter from the Revolutionary War. "And this tells you that even when things look their worst, you shouldn't give up," she said. Jack held up the slate from the Pioneer Schoolhouse. "This says, if at first you don't succeed, try again," he said. Then Jack held up a piece of wood from the San Francisco earthquake. "And this says that when you've lost everything, you still have hope," he said. The man studied the 4 special writings. Then he looked at Jack and Annie with piercing gray eyes. "You were both very kind to find all of these things and bring them to me," he said. "Are you magic?" "Oh, no," said Annie. "Morgan is magic. We're just ordinary kids." The man smiled. He seemed less sad and weary now. "And I'm just an ordinary king," he said softly. "I suppose if 2 ordinary kids can find courage and hope, then an ordinary king can find it too." The man slowly stood up. "I will go now and speak to my knights," he said. I will share the wisdom you have brought me." He wrapped his cape around him. He bowed to Jack and Annie. "Thank you," he said, and he strode bravely out of Morgan's library. "Yes, thank you," said Morgan, walking over to Jack and Annie. "You're welcome," they said. "These are for your library," said Jack. He and Annie gave Morgan the 4 special writings. Morgan smiled. "Their wisdom will help many readers who come here," she said. "Great," said Annie. "It's time for you to go home now," said Morgan. Jack looked around Morgan's library. He hated to leave. It was the most wonderful room he'd ever seen. "Don't worry, you can come back," said Morgan, reading his mind. "You must come back, for both of you have helped save Camelot." Okay, I'm just making sure. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something. "You must come back, for you both have helped save Camelot. Goodbye for now." Before Jack and Annie could speak, there was another blinding flash. Then they were home again, in the treehouse, in Frog Creek, in the early morning. Chapter 10. The Mystery of Morgan's Library. "I can't believe we took a trip to Morgan's library," said Annie. Jack smiled and nodded. "It was incredible, wasn't it?" said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. A strong breeze gusted through the treehouse window. It blew open their research book about San Francisco. Annie reached for the book. "Jack," she said, "look at this." She pointed to a photograph in the research book. It showed a boy and a girl covered with dirt. The boy held a sign. It was the poem about hope. Annie read the caption aloud. "After the earthquake, while fires raged through the city, 2 brave children tried to give hope to others." Annie laughed. "Those brave children are us," she said. "That's the picture Fred took of us before we left San Francisco." Jack laughed and shook his head with amazement. Annie closed the book. "I guess we are 2 brave kids who tried to give hope," she said. "We just gave some hope to King Arthur, didn't we?" "King Arthur?" said Jack. "Yeah," said Annie. She started down the rope ladder. That was the mystery of Morgan's library. We had to give 4 special writings to King Arthur so he could get his hope and courage back to save Camelot. "That wasn't King Arthur," said Jack. He threw on his pack and followed Annie. "Sure it was," said Annie, stepping onto the ground. "Didn't you hear him say, 'I'm just an ordinary king'? Get it? King?" "But King Arthur's not an ordinary king," said Jack. "Well, he thinks so," said Annie. "I know it was him. I feel it." She smiled. Then she started through the Frog Creek woods. Jack stared after her. "King Arthur?" As birdsong filled the early morning woods, Jack thought about their visit to Morgan's library. He remembered the sad king and how their writings seemed to give him strength. Maybe Annie was right. Maybe they really had helped King Arthur save Camelot. And maybe someday they would go back. "Hurry, Jack," Annie called, "before Mom and Dad wake up." "Coming," Jack shouted, and he took off after her, running for home, finally. I liked that one too. These last 3 I liked. They were good. I liked that one. It made me happy. And I liked that the mystery was inspiring. I liked the end of this. I think this was really good. This made me happy. And we're lucky enough that we still have another set of stories to read because I have book number 25, Stage Fright on a Summer Night. The show must go on. That's what Jack and Annie learned when the magic treehouse whisked them back to the Elizabethan England, which is the time of Queen Elizabeth. There they meet William Shakespeare himself, one of the greatest writers of all time. But Mr. Shakespeare is having a hard time with some of his actors in his latest show. Are Jack and Annie ready to make a big entrance? Or will it be curtains for Shakespeare? Find out when we read Magic Treehouse, book number 25, Stage Fright on a Summer Night. And we will be reading this tomorrow. I hope you are having a wonderful Wednesday. Mine has been really awesome. I have really enjoyed my day. And I hope you did too. I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.